if you came over my house and I was wearing a fucking platinum mink robe from head to toe, and I had gaudy jewels all over me and a big metal grill on my mouth, and I had fucking cane all over my countertop, and I snorted it right in front of you, you can't say anything.
Real quick, this is a part 2 in a sense, so if you haven't seen part 1, I'd recommend it. That's all.
This was already on top of other compounding, smaller problems, like Phil's jealousy of larger content creators and how he would lash out, creating unwanted
That's
attention towards his channel or just himself.
That part's
Comments
true.
would also sometimes spark jealousy of his friends and would create a response from Phil.
Case in point, in this teaser trailer, there's a funny scene featuring John Rambo, and everyone says it's the best part of the trailer, and I even saw comments saying, wow, this is Rambo's the funniest thing. Guess what? I wrote that scene.
These small, inconsequential things would add up slowly and drive a rift between DSP and John Rambo. Like,
And you want to know why they did? My detractors. Because at this point, in 2012, there was a group of people starting videos called This Is How You Don't Play, which I'm sure he'll cover, okay? And then, based off of that, they wanted to try to create trolling and a rift between me and my friends. So what they would do is they would hear me say something like that in a video, and then they would go to John behind the scenes, and they would flag him in all his videos, like video comments on his YouTube channel. They would email him and be like, hey, John, Phil is taking all the credit. Phil is trying to say that you didn't do anything and he wrote everything in the show. Obviously, that's not what actually happened there, right? But that's what they would do. They put the little bug in his ear to piss him off. And it got to him, and he confronted me about it. I don't know if he'll talk about this or not. Let's see.
This just screams to me how little DSP really thinks, or at least thought of John Rambo. He talks about it as if John Rambo didn't come to any of these conclusions himself, as if every issue Rambo ever had been because of these detractors who would worm their way in and plant seeds of distrust. Even if that were the case, even if trolls were the apparatus in which the news was brought to Rambo, he still took offense to it. He still took personal issue with the fact that you said those things. And if he really wanted to, he absolutely could have heard all of those things that you were saying about him in that situation by himself completely without the trolls, because you posted it all online publicly on your own. So let's not sit here and act like it's all the trolls' fault. You were the one who said those things. You're the one who created this issue because you couldn't stand to see other people getting praised for something you thought you should have been receiving credit for. And that really goes to show you the kind of friend that DSP really is as well, tearing his own friends down just so he can get any minuscule amount of praise possible. It's pathetic.
Phil at first would pay John Rambo 50% of all the earnings in the Let's Plays he was involved in, but as it becomes more difficult to calculate the earnings with DSP's expansive catalog of videos, instead he would just toss him $100 every time he visited.
That's also incorrect. June made a few mistakes here, or at least he's just going off of hearsay, okay? That's completely incorrect. I was giving John 50% of the revenue on the videos he was involved in when Machinima would provide me with reports on how much money the videos made. This was before YouTube had detailed analytics on YouTube. We're talking 2010, 11, and 12, okay? When by the time that those came out, we weren't doing this anymore, okay? So the only way I could get actual data on what I made on each video, I had to each month write to Machinima, my partner network, and say, can you please give me a report? Because I really need that data to pay my friend who's essentially my employee. And I would wait and wait and wait. And then finally, they would get back to me and send me a report. Eventually, Machinima had so much reorganization and change inside of their structure, they didn't ever provide reports anymore. I asked, they said, we can't do that anymore. So, and there was no analytics, so there was no way for me to know what the videos made. Now, we could guess based on, view performance and what we saw, previous we were making on a certain amount of views and stuff like that, per video. And basically what ended up happening was John and I came to an agreement. He would basically want, I think it was $100 every visit, every Saturday for his time. So $100 for the whole day to hang out and play video games and stuff like that. Okay. And that was he wanted. That wasn't me saying, hey, I'll offer it. That's what he asked for. I would have given him more. If he said, I want $500 a weekend, I probably would have said yes, because I enjoyed the content we were making together.
But you didn't. When it came down to it, you undercut your own best friend to save a few dollars. He said previously that when he went into this conversation with John that he expected to pay him about $300, and upon hearing the request for $100 instead, he gladly accepted. That's just so unjustifiably disrespectful. You should be paying people what you think they're worth regardless, but to do that to your own close friend? That's just villainous behavior if you ask me. He's talking about the one who got away, his one true love, and yet he's shorting him a couple of $100 every single weekend? Who needs enemies when you got friends like DSP?
And for the record, again, I've already talked about all this when I reacted to the John and Howard video specifically years ago, but to clarify again, re-clarify, basically, I liked doing this so much with John. I just didn't see it as work. He apparently did. I thought it was a hangout session we were getting paid for, so I would have paid him whatever just to help him out. By the end, by like the last maybe year that we were doing co-op every Saturday together and I was paying him for his work, I was paying him more than the videos were making. The videos that we were making for that one day, the co-op videos, were not making $100 in ad revenue. They weren't. The views had plummeted. The views on our co-op stuff had gone way, way down for the most part. So I was paying him $100 a week when we were probably making $50 on ads. So I was out all that money, but I didn't care because I was helping my friend. You understand? Like, that's all I really cared about, was helping him out. If he had asked for more, I would have given him even more. Okay? So there you go. That's plain as day, the truth. I've already talked about it 2 years ago, and my story has not changed, okay? So I don't know if June's going to play my side or not. He's literally only playing John's side here when I have already reacted to this and given my side.
You don't get to sit there and act as though you're some benevolent gifter while lowballing your own best friend. That's not how any of this works. But of course John saw it as work. He had to come every single weekend from New York State to DSP's ramshackle condo in Connecticut. After already working a different job, he has to now try and be as entertaining as possible for a flat fee of $100. It doesn't take a genius to realize how shitty of a situation that actually was for John, even if they were friends. Maybe he didn't mind it at first, but that kind of commitment and time investment is going to wear on anyone. But DSP doesn't think about that. He doesn't ever think about anyone but himself. He tries to defend himself by claiming that he was paying John more than the ad revenue when the videos were making, but he just claimed that Machinima quit sending the data, so how can he make that claim at all? And if he knew that, why didn't he just clarify this information to John? An even better question still, I think, is actually if he had seen that the co-op vids were dropping dramatically in viewership, why was he still requesting Rambo to come all the way out there to make the content? Wouldn't it have been easier to just use the power of the internet to make the content via online play and save some time, money, and effort on everyone's behalf? Since, you know, the revenue was smaller? Business side Phil, I have so many questions, please.
We start showing up to your house, and what do we see? The guy starts buying figurines, starts buying all this ridiculous shit that there's no need to buy. Then we show up to his house.
Because it's my money, and I can do whatever I want with it, Howard. I'm the one who's working my ass off 7 days a week, pumping out tens of thousands of videos to make a lot of money. So I can spend my money however I want. If you came over my house and I was wearing a platinum mink robe from head to toe, and I had gaudy jewels all over me and a big metal grill on my mouth, and I had cane all over my countertop, and I snorted it right in front of you, you can't say anything because I earned it, because it's my money that I earned being a YouTuber.
DSP's reactions to Howard content will never not make me laugh. He so clearly just doesn't care for Howard whenever he gets brought up, but he always has to make it seem like all of the animosity was on Howard's behalf the whole time. I don't know, it just amuses me. Every issue he has with Howard, though, stems from Howard sticking up for friends of his that Phil has wronged. No one was being paid for Project 7, aside from Rambo after his car broke down, so of course people were going to be a bit upset when they see you living a life of luxury filled with all those dumb statues and a BMW that you didn't know how to maintain. Howard did nothing but stand up on his friend's behalf when talking about how DSP wronged them, and I don't see any issue with that. But you guys, Phil was working his ass off all the time, getting blackout drunk and spamming slop content onto his channel 30 to 50 times a day for that money. He's allowed to spend it how he sees fit. Give me a break, this guy wouldn't know work if it snapped his back in two and pinned him for the 10 count.
DSP was spending ever more frivolously. In contrast to his 2011 4-minute condo tour, this new condo tour took a total of 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 27 seconds.
This is all true, and I do regret spending a lot of my money like I did back then. I 100% do, because if I had kept it all in savings, right, like a hoarder, then probably I wouldn't have gotten to half the financial troubles that I got into in the next decade. But instead, I blew a lot of it because I never had money like that before, and I was irresponsible, and I bought a bunch of statues and clutter and shit. However, to be fair, I was also making a ton of money. Like, take a look. My condo tour is 12 parts, about 15 to 20,000 views each. No exaggeration. This condo tour alone made me hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, which just buys another statue if I want it. So it wasn't like, oh, he's frivolously spending, but he's not making the money. I was making the money, and then I was frivolously spending it. You understand? This wasn't, I actually didn't even have like a credit card balance at this point in my history. I had nothing at all. I was clean. I had savings actually at this point in the bank in the tens of thousands of dollars. I think at one point I had over $40,000 in savings saved up. Okay.
Think about that though. He claims in 2012 that he had $40,000 in savings, yet when 2014 came around and he moved to the other side of the country, he went into debt. Where did it all go? I mean, the answer is obvious. It went to nonsense. It went to all of those baby man statues that no one could give a shit less about. And he's trying to justify the whole thing by saying that he made the money back by making the videos on them, but then he would just go and spend that money on more statues, so he's still coming out negative. I'll never understand this mentality. He claims he never had money, so he was blowing it like it was going out of style. That just doesn't make any sort of sense to me. If you never had money, wouldn't you be trying to build a solid foundation with it so that you're never broke again? Shout out Youngboy, obviously. Because that would make more sense to me, yet he did the exact opposite and wasted every cent he could. Also, he said that he could save his money like a hoarder. I know he meant hoarder as in to hoard money, but I think that the term applies more to the act of spending the money. He spent the money like a hoarder because he filled his condo up with useless shit like he was going to apply to be on the next season of the hit A&E show.
But to just end cap that part, for the most part, he covered the most dramatic stuff about the John and Howard and Project 7 situation, but he literally only took their side. He didn't even take anything from my rebuttal years later that basically said, no, most of the stuff they're saying is fake, you know, or over exaggerated, or it's really only from one perspective and it's not correct. Maybe he will later, because I didn't do my response to that till like 2-3 years ago. So maybe he will later, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just discredit and never pretend like I never rebutted. I don't know.
This was a reoccurring thing in the second viewing ceremony of the June doc, and that's why I included this. Several times throughout the stream, he took issue with the fact that June wasn't playing all of his own streams, retconning all of the information that had just been presented. But I thought that that was the reason that DSP was reacting to it. I thought that was the kind of information that DSP was going to provide, the other side of the story, the context. Could you imagine the nightmare it would have been giving all of the information just to then have to explain that everything that was just said is actually wrong and then allow DSP to give all of the reasons as to why? The guy was complaining about the doc being long with it only being 4 hours long. Had he included DSP's side of every story, the doc would have been never ending.
So Arrow Squirrel does a super chat. Metal Gear Solid was funny as fuck, but not worth hating Phil. Yeah, again, what I have to emphasize here is that it was my shtick to always be over the top. If I was playing a difficult game, yeah, the game could be difficult, but I'm going to completely over exaggerate how hard it is and yell and complain and scream. That was the DSP character people knew. They knew it from when I played online in a fighting game. If I'm losing, I freak out at the person, right? So if I'm losing a Metal Gear Solid because it's actually a tough game, I'm going to complain about the game. I'm going to say it sucks. I'm going to say Kojima's a terrible game director. It's all part of my shtick. And the thing is, up until I did Metal Gear Solid, no one really cared. It wasn't like, oh, Phil's like an awful gamer or awful content creator. People thought it was funny. When I played Metal Gear Solid, all of a sudden, because it was Metal Gear Solid and Kojima that I was doing that to, it was like blasphemous. Like, how dare you criticize our gaming god and idol? Oh, holy Kojima may not be criticized. How dare you say these things? And when I saw that, okay, I essentially hammed it up even worse. Because, you know, this was not a playthrough I did in a day. This is a playthrough that I would do in a week or 2 weeks. So I'm going to ham it up even worse. I'm going to make more fun of Kojima because you claimed that you're upset by it. That's how I was. I was this antagonist, and that's how I got a lot of attention for myself. So this was the first time where it actually blew up in my face. Before this, it always worked, and people liked it. This was the first time I was like, I don't get it. I'm doing the same thing that I used to do, and people liked, and now people are hating on me for it, saying like I fucked up, but I swear to God, this is the same thing I did with every other game. So I'm confused, you know? But it blew up in my face.
That just goes to show you the maturity level of Phil though. He saw the backlash, he saw the ire he was drawing, yet he doubled down. And let us acknowledge openly that his MGS playthrough that spawned the very first This Is How You Don't Play was not just another bad playthrough, where Phil was his normal obnoxious self. No sir. His fundamental misunderstanding of every mechanic and outright refusal to learn anything was next level. So for him to then begin blaming not only the studio, but outright call out a notable figure like Kojima multiple times and put all of his own shortcomings at their feet was absurd and deserved to be called out for what it was. To this day though, he loves to act as though it was Kojima fanboys and not his own actions that created this whole "this is how you don't play" movement, as he likes to call it.
I received an $11 tip. Probably, maybe, allegedly. So we're all big mad at Phil for living like a bachelor, filling his condo with stuff of his own interests. Why is this such a topic? Why Phil, what Phil does with his income? It always has been. It literally always has been a topic. And I think what June's getting at is that this is an established history of being financially irresponsible. That even when I had money, I spent it on dumb shit. I didn't handle it well. And this is going to eventually lead to my financial downfall later. You know, declaring bankruptcy, having to beg my audience constantly for contributions, etc. Right? I think he's establishing a narrative and a pattern This is the story arc. Do you understand? This is the ongoing background story of DSP. I mean, it even said in the description of the video, I've been around for nearly 20 years, leaving a path of chaos and financial ruin behind me. So that's his story. His story is that I'm bad with money. So expect more of this. There will be even more. If you're okay with a man spending his money however he wants, you're probably not going to like the rest of this documentary because it's probably going to be highly critical of me spending money. Okay?
You know, I lived by myself for a while, an entire year actually, and not once did I scam my friends for free work or fill my abode with shitty statues. So I think it's a bit of a stretch to define this as living like a bachelor. I also think it's incredibly disrespectful to say that this money illiteracy is June's story, because it's not. Whether he wants to admit it or not, this is the DSP doc. This is the history of DSP. This is his story. I know this Kino arc has him gassed up thinking that no one has any business casting judgment on how he spends his money, but that's just not how most people feel. It doesn't matter who you are or how you made your money. When it comes to other people, they're going to make judgments and they will discuss these judgments amongst themselves. You don't have to like it, it's just the way that the world works. Everyone is always looking in their neighbor's bowl, and there is nothing that will change that. But again, to say that this is June's story almost implies that this is some sort of narrative that he's trying to push, when the reality is that he's just putting out the information for everybody to take a look at. And it just so happens to be clear that DSP is financially illiterate.
Why am I going to support somebody who I've been trying to help for so many years?
Whenever I tried to help, he shat on me for it. You didn't try to help. He was saying things like DSP is a dinosaur because he's not doing direct capture and live streaming. I actually just had this very same conversation with Keemstar the other day when I interviewed him, okay? I'm the kind of guy that if you talk to me with respect and being nice, I will listen to you and I will actually cherish your opinions and your criticism. If you come at me in a very negative way, trolling, insults, I'm literally going to shut you off. Even if what you're saying is valid, I don't care. You came at me in a very negative way. It's the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated, right? I'm sure that he wouldn't have wanted me to immediately say, hey man, you're an asshole, blah, blah, blah. Here's what you need to improve. Wait, what? But you prefaced it saying that I'm an asshole, right? So if you preface it saying that I'm a dinosaur, I'm not going to listen to you, all right? In his mind, maybe he thinks I'm helping Phil, but if you come at me in a negative, awful way, I'm not going to give a crap about what you're saying.
That kind of reaction to valid criticism because there was a negative connotation, though, is a character flaw, one that, if he's aware it exists, he should be working on. Yet it's been a decade and he's still the same person. To this day, if you want Phil to take any suggestion, you practically have to get on your hands and knees with your mouth open. That's not an acceptable way to be as an online content creator. That's not how you get better in this space, or any space for that matter. It's no wonder he's always been so behind the times. Normal people don't stroke your meat before telling you how to make yourself better, but for DSP, that's the only way he's willing to listen. And it's for that reason that only recently has Phil began working with other people, and it's all thanks to the boys over at the casino.
And then there were videos coming out supporting Chris.
Very recently, there's been a lot of videos that have been coming out on YouTube about Darkside Phil, exposing him or whatever. The one that really got me was the one that was made by Chris, of Chris and Teo.
And no, there weren't. At this point, there weren't. It was the This Is How You Don't Play videos were the ones that were coming out and getting traction. There wasn't a lot of videos that Phil's been exposed and shit. That's bullshit. Videos like this were getting like a few thousand views. It was This Is How You Don't Play that was blowing up and was getting hundreds of thousands of views. And those are the ones I was worried about, because what I was worried about was, if people are just going to go watch This Is How You Don't Play instead of my raw gameplay, that means my business is going to suffer. They're not going to watch me put out the videos on my channel. They're going to wait for someone else to make This Is How You Don't Play, and they're going to get my view and my revenue that I should have earned on my original content, and I never did. That's where my concern was. I didn't give a shit about people making this kind of video.
Are This Is How You Don't Plays not exposing your bad gameplay a large part of who you are? I know this is semantics, but let's be honest, he's playing semantics here as well. I'm not at all surprised to hear that he cared more about This Is How You Don't Plays though. As he stated himself, he was more concerned about the potential money he was missing out instead of his image actively being tarred and feathered by people who have dealt with him personally. I know he's never been the best when it comes to keeping a positive image, hell, you could argue he's one of the worst, but this seems like such a strange thing to admit to. I don't think that I have to explain to you that missing out on a few dollars here and there is a better outcome than prominent members of your own community coming out against you with complaints akin to the ones Mighty Furtado had. Because very quickly the latter can snowball into the former, and that is kind of exactly what happened, isn't it?
Publicly, I will tell you all this, all right? This is a confession. I've already said this before, but I'm going to say it again for the purposes of this react. I, at this point, thought my shit didn't stink. I was of the impression that if I was a successful YouTuber for 5 years, I knew what was good, and everyone else didn't know anything. Just because everyone else was going direct capture and live stream didn't mean I had to. I didn't have to follow the trends. I was being a contrarian, right? Everyone says, no, Phil, you're a dinosaur. I'm like, well, fuck you. Then I'm the dinosaur that'll keep making a good business and you can go fuck yourself. That's what my attitude was. That was 100% the wrong attitude to have. Because even though there were people coming at me in a negative way, saying it in an insulting way, a lot of people just wanted to see me continue to win. And the fact that they saw that my channel was losing views, I was starting to get made fun of by people. People didn't like it. Oh man, he was such a popular guy. And now look, everyone's laughing at him and shit, right? I didn't listen. I had opportunity to listen. I had opportunity to take constructive criticism and grow. But at this point, my head was so fucking big from being a popular YouTuber, from making the money I was making, and not giving in, not changing to trends, but still doing what I'd done all along and still being successful, that I refused to change for the better. Okay?
And this is exactly the type of thing that you would want to hear from somebody in Phil's position. The only issue is that every single action he's taken recently proves time after time that he hasn't actually changed at all. He's still always playing contrarian. He continues to talk poorly about other people and think that every opinion out of his own mouth is gospel. And he's still implementing basic content features about 5 years behind everybody else on the platform. So all this yapping he's doing about changing for the better is just a way to fluff himself up. And I'm not usually one to do this, but what is this freeze frame? Why does he look like that? What is this little pose he's doing?
It's on me. That's absolutely 100% on me. Even when I adopted direct capture and live streaming in 2013, I ignored the stream chat. I refused to talk to people in the chat as if they were there and have a conversation. I was like, you guys, the peanut gallery, you can watch live if you want. I'm going to pretend like this is an offline video. What? What am I, a moron? Yeah, I was. I literally 100% was a fucking moron. I never should have acted like that. That was a gold mine to have that interaction with my live audience, to create new kinds of content, right? And I ignored it all. I streamed without interacting with the audience for 4 years. 4 fucking years. I'm an idiot, you know? But now I know that, because eventually I said, okay, I'll change now. All right. I will, totally listen. And in 2017, I changed. And all of a sudden, it was like night and day. My God, my audience is talking to me. We're having a good time. People are getting to know the real me instead of the asshole. You know what I mean? And then I changed for the better over the last 7 years to not even think that way. Now, I cherish your criticism. I cherish your input and your constructive suggestions. It makes my content way better. But back then, in 2012, 2013, I was a big-headed idiot. I literally thought I was top of the world and everyone else sucked. How dare you tell me to improve? How tell you to change? I didn't want to listen to anyone. And that's on me. And that's really one of the core reasons why I had that situation where everyone hated me and I got into a massive decline. That's where really the origin of the detractors came from. Okay?
Good lord, does he ramble. He's still that big-headed idiot, though. Look at how he's let a little bit of buzz absolutely warp his perspective into thinking that he's on some redemption arc. Because you could replace all of the things that he just said about how he was slow to adapt to live chat and replace it with pretty much everything that he's changed as of late. How long were people telling him to get a PC and invest in upgrades to the stream so that everyone could have a better experience? And for how much of that time was he fighting them at every single junction? How many different people have told him that he should make clips of his own content for ease of access? Now he's so late to the party on both accounts, and as a result of this, his skill is also lacking in both departments as well, because he's barely capable of launching a game on Steam without chat's help, and he doesn't even manage to clip his most interesting content.
But that's different from today. As you'll see, my detractors definitely evolved differently over the years to be something so much more harmful than just a bunch of people making fun of me on the internet with "this is how you don't play," and we'll get to that. The Crunchiest Onion did a super chat. Do you not feel like sometimes a valid criticism has to be insulting because it's a harsh truth? Do you feel you sometimes confuse nice criticism as insults? Of course. Of course. Again, I'm a human, and I make mistakes, and I tend to get heated about certain topics and things, and yes, absolutely. Absolutely, that's possible.
Anytime I hear someone use that they are only human as an excuse, I know it's exactly that, and an excuse and a crock of shit. He knows damn well that this is the case more often than not, and that he has not actually made any forward progress in his ability to accept criticism. DSP's ego is far too massive for any sort of legitimate criticism. That's why, again, the only way to get anything through to DSP is to gas the hell out of him. I don't know why he thinks that this is something that is even believable.
Have you been on Darkside Phil's stream when he fucking flips out of people using Adblock? About how you're it's like going into his house and robbing him and taking all his shit.
They should find out where he lives and rob him. Like, I gotta go to his house.
Man, you're taking.
Oh, the Adblock, right? Because at the time, they weren't called detractors at this point. I think they were I called them trolls or whatever. They were literally going around saying, just watch Phil's content with the ads off, with Adblock on, excuse me. That way, you could still watch him, but he makes no money, right? Now, today, I want you to think about that. Today, if someone said, hey, it's okay to watch everyone's content with Adblock on, a lot of people would be like, well, no, actually, it's not. You know, that's kind of messed up. But back then, It was kind of a new thing. And so Adblock was a hot piece of contention. It was actually things people talk about all the time. Should you have ads on? Should you not have ads on? Should you be able to make a living on YouTube videos? Is it okay for people to have Adblock on when they're watching someone who they know that their living is made on YouTube ads?
DSP is over there doing his best mundane Mad impression, and I just wanted to include this because I personally think this looks lame as hell. I hope that everyone's ad blocker works forever and you never see another ad. For those of you who do watch ads though, you have saintly patience. If Adblock is the difference between you being able to pay your bills or not, then maybe you shouldn't be doing content full time. It just seems like an incredibly risky venture to be taking when the cost could be everything. I guess there really are no punishments though, as you can just file for bankruptcy. Ack.
Keep in mind at this time, okay, during this time period, there was no live streaming, there was no super chats, no memberships, no subscriptions, no tips, none of that. It was just my entire living was made on ad revenue. I didn't even have any sponsorships or product placements. My shit was basically just ads. So if you're watching my content with Adblock on, you are taking my livelihood away from me. And I directly talked about it, but I probably shouldn't have, correct? I probably shouldn't have said that at all. I should have just been quiet and never said a word about it and just let people do what they want. Because what happens is when you bring shit up like this, it just makes it bigger. So what happens? More people do it, right? So by me addressing it and bringing it up, immediately more and more people start doing the bad thing that I don't want them to do, and it ends up hurting me. And that's my fault. I'm dumb for having brought it up and acted and addressed it in the way that I did, right?
Again, it sounds like he's learned something, but to this day, you can very easily tell what does and doesn't bother him. He makes it very obvious even when he doesn't overtly say it. But he is right, pointing things out like that absolutely make more people do it.
I got the confirmation over the weekend that we are good to go. We are closing this week. By the end of this week, I will be the owner of a beautiful new townhouse / condo in Washington State. It's probably going to cost me about $7,500. I shit you not, it's that expensive to move across the country. It cost me way more than that. Way more than that. Because that was what the estimate was. And then when they actually hit me with the bill, it was more. After the move, I was like, what the fuck? And then, of course, I mean, you got to think of other things, like furnishing the house, right? Getting a foothold out here, all what it costs to do that. So it was way more than that.
Price tag that high wouldn't have been so notable had he just saved some of that $40K he supposedly had before the statue collection was fully assembled. He is right though, furnishing a house is expensive. That's why for the longest time when I moved out, I didn't have a couch or a TV. Because when you want to make something happen bad enough and you are reasonable, you're willing to make some of these sacrifices. Not DSP though, oh no, he had to furnish his home in the most complicated way possible. And it's with great delight that I get to remind everybody now that DSP purchased furniture in Connecticut to have it shipped all the way to Renton by a moving company. Imagine the dollar amount that added to the final cost. And if that wasn't bad enough, also know that Phil and Leanna arrived in Renton before the furniture, so while they waited, they bought, you guessed it, additional furniture to hold them over. I'm quickly beginning to see how the $7,500 price tag rapidly grew if this was the kind of decision making that was going on behind the scenes.
But also in December, he was making more vlogs showing his continued poor spending habits that were discourteous even to his parents that Phil set up in a hotel instead of having them stay in the condo.
My parents are visiting for the Christmas week holiday, and they actually took the car. That's right. I let them take the BMW. So yeah, that's a lot of trust, but I trust my parents. They actually are staying at a hotel that's less than 10 minutes away. We got them up. We set them up at room and board. It's a nice hotel.
How was that discourteous to my parents? It was a hotel that was 10 minutes away. That was a really nice hotel room that I paid for. And they didn't have to stay in the one spare bedroom of my house that was really small and not set up to be a bedroom. How is that discourteous? I got them a better accommodation than what it would have been in my house. And I let them drive my BMW around town.
I agree, getting them hotel accommodations is not the worst thing to do, but have you seen the inside of this guy's house? All those extra rooms and you couldn't have made something work for the time being? They came from the other side of the country specifically to see him and his at-the-time girlfriend, and he couldn't find time to make the accommodations within his own home? Like I said, staying in a hotel and allowing them to use the BMW is better than nothing, but I have no doubt in my mind that they would have appreciated being allowed to stay there in the comfort of his home, and any son worth their salt would have made that happen. The fact that he doesn't see anything wrong simply because he paid for it shows you that he clearly values money more than the genuine thought and effort from people.
He said that was discourteous. Huh? Now that I'm really confused about. If you were going to go visit someone and stay with them for a week, and they had a small spare bedroom that wasn't set up as a bedroom. So you're going to have to sleep on like crappy accommodations, like a inflatable mattress on the floor or something, right? Or if they said, instead of that, I'm going to pay for you to have a suite You know, the suite at a hotel room where it's like the giant room where you have 2 rooms you walk between and it has all that shit. You know what I mean? A really nice one. I'm going to pay for that for you to stay there instead. And I'm going to give you my BMW to drive around town while you're here. Would you be upset that I said, I'm going to do that for you? Or would you like to just stay in the house that's in a bedroom that's not set up as a bedroom and sleep on the floor? I'm a little confused about that one. That one, I really feel like now we're starting to get nitpicky. My parents loved the fact that we got them the hotel room. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm sure they told you that they loved it, DSP. I'm sure it was much appreciated, but the fact remains you couldn't make space in that large condo of yours to better suit your own elderly parents, who came across the country to see you. Just because they appreciate what's done for them doesn't mean you should give them as little effort as possible. If I recall the story correctly, his mom was the main reason he wanted to get them a hotel, because she has a myriad of health issues and has been knocking on death's door for over a decade now, if you believe what Phil says at least. Due to those illnesses, she has to have a particular sleeping arrangement that he thought the hotel would be better suited to accommodate, I guess. The result, though, was that his mother wound up sleeping in a hotel room chair. Now, I don't think that it was the cuck chair that every hotel room seems to have. I do think that it was a recliner style, but still, she could sleep in a chair and he didn't have a spare one for her to sleep on in his own home? Make that make sense.
The following month, Phil on his own forums equated using the chat function on his live streams but not donating as loitering, but it's okay because he's lenient. As much as he claims to be, his audience from both sides were not convinced.
that's absolutely ludicrous. That's probably me just being really angry at someone and being an asshole. That's absolutely ludicrous. Oh, it's not loitering. The only time that I will get upset is, let's say, for example, right now, we're doing a stream on this documentary, right? And you guys have been talking all night. You're on topic. Imagine if someone comes in here and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people start talking about college basketball. And now the entire chat room is college basketball. You derailed the stream. It's off topic. You're not supposed to do that. That's like going into a place of business, not spending any money while you're in there, but just standing around walking, taking up all the space, doing shit that's unrelated to the business, right? It's not allowed. It's called loitering. But no, you can come in here as long as you're respectful and you follow the rules and you're not derailing. Anyone's welcome in my chat. This is just me being really pissed off right here about dumb shit. You know, me being unhinged at the swatting and everything. It made me lose my cool and say dumb shit like this.
He went on a whole diatribe just to ultimately say the exact same thing he was being accused of posting. Of course, he said it in the most roundabout way possible, as is typical, but the takeaway was the same. The only real difference is that in this modern adaptation, he doesn't equate it directly to loitering because even he has to acknowledge that that's absurd. Speaking of absurd though, trying to blame that post on the swatting? What sort of mental gymnastics do you have to do in order for that to be logical? Sure, maybe if it happened the same day, I could understand a lash out, but this was posted on July 11th, 2015, and the swatting happened at the end of June, so it's been at least 2 weeks. Even if it was the same day, this is completely unrelated. If it were linked to the swatting, wouldn't it be about that to at least some extent? Talk about a cope.
At the end, John Rambo offers an olive branch by stating that a phone call could fix this. But Phil never did call, and so Phil lost touch with the last friend he had. Not even a month later, now closing 2015, Machinima informed.
By the way, he was not the last friend I had. That's ridiculous. It's just, that's way overdramatic. I still had friends, just not friends like John Rambo who were public friends on YouTube. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I really enjoyed that line in my original viewing, and I'm so glad he had something to say about it. As you could tell though, it took him a second. I don't know if it was because he was debating on addressing it or if it just took him a second to actually process what was being said. Either way, it was very amusing. He claims that this statement is wrong though, that he did in fact still have friends. I'm sure many of you made the same owl-style noises as I did, asking who? When was the last time you heard about DSP interacting with friends in real life? When did you last hear about DSP being in contact with someone and getting updates about life back in Connecticut? Because I genuinely cannot remember the last time he talked about someone he considered a friend positively. Fortunately though, we aren't the only ones asking these questions, as someone from the audience asked after the subject themselves.
Only Ice Infinite name one friend besides John Rambo? What do you mean, at that time? Well, first of all, I was living with my girlfriend, right? So that was a friend. I still had many friends from back home who I talked to, and like old school friends from Street Fighter and shit like that I still had contact with. I had the Airy Lord and Coruchado who I did co-op with online. I had other people like Brian at the time, I think, that I was playing Street Fighter with. There were tons of people. And that's just a few off the top of my head. So nice try, but you're wrong.
Oh, of course. His girlfriend was his friend, stupid. And how could I forget? Let me check my notes. Air Raid Lord and Horachado. Those guys were clearly his friends. See, he wasn't left by his one true love, John Rambo, you guys. He had so many other friends to talk to. That's why they're all still best friends, right? Right?
He calls Total Biscuit's reviews overanalyzing, calls Jim Sterling's reviews reviews that fool you into thinking they're intelligent with fancy wording, and Angry Joe's reviews bloated with skits and cosplay for kiddies to retain attention. The cherry on top was the purpose of this post was to represent his own views.
All right, do you want to know the absolute truth? Are you ready for this one, folks? Do you want to know how bad and hypocritical I was? Because I'm going to fess up to it right now. I swear to God, this is God's honest truth. I have never seen a piece of content from Total Biscuit or Jim Sterling. And I said those things. I have literally never watched a piece of content from either of those creators. I will fess up to that right now with all of you. I was just talking out of my ass, insulting people for no reason because I just felt miserable and I wanted to lash out at the world.
He acts as though this is some sort of shocking revelation. Yeah, Phil, we kind of figured that was the case. That's why to this day, whenever he talks poorly about other content creators, everyone assumes he doesn't know what he's talking about and he's just upset that they're successful. He is undoubtedly proving once again exactly the reason so many people found a way to hate on him though. He was just going out of his way as often as possible to piss everybody off because he was miserable. But oh, it's the detractors' fault that everybody hates the guy, obviously.
I did see Angry Joe's stuff, and some of Angry Joe's stuff is quite good and some isn't that good in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. But out of those 3 people that I just crapped on, I literally only saw one of them ever, and I just shat on them anyway. Again, the same pattern of me shitting on Minecraft and all this shit, it continued. The bad behavior was continuing over these years of me being this really just curmudgeoned, salty, really upset, jealous asshole. All right? Can you imagine saying shit like that when you fucking never even saw a piece of their content? Like, why did I do that? I don't even know. I was just a piece of shit.
Nobody has to imagine it because he still demonstrates this on a regular basis. I am glad, however, that we can all at least come to the same conclusion in the end, that DSP is a piece of shit. How often does he talk about another streamer and he only vaguely knows who they are but talks on them as if he knows everything? Just because the names have changed doesn't mean that he's behaving any different, but he's got to push the narrative that he's not the same person. He's got to push the narrative that he's somebody else now and try and capture whatever fleeting popularity he has off of this Kino arc. And with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe. Goodbye.